Good morning. Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 Good Minutes with the Word. We're continuing our study of the Gospel of Matthew, and we're finishing chapter 22 today, and this brings to a close this section that began back in chapter 21 when the the high priest confronted Jesus and said, "By what authority are you setting up shop here in our space?" In the temple in Jerusalem. And Jesus gave them a question they would not answer. They had an answer to give, but they were afraid. It was not politically astute for them to give an answer to that question. They refused to answer it. Well, now Jesus is going to ask the Pharisees a question that they can't answer, which I don't think is technically true. I think they won't answer it either. I think they can't answer it in the moment. But I think if they would stop and think for a minute, they would be able to answer the question, and they would come to truth. In the same way that Jesus' question of the Sadducees, or the high priestly party, would have led them to the truth had they just bothered to answer it. And they had the resources to answer it. I think the Pharisees, with their knowledge of the Word and their belief in all of the Old Testament, not just the first 5 books, if they will take the trouble to answer this question, it will lead them to the truth as well. But they refuse. And so it is a perfect bookend to this section, and it's really a nice piece of stitching together that Matthew does in telling us his story to link these events together in this way. Now, while the Pharisees, that's important, because the Sadducees it wouldn't matter to them what the Psalms say. That's why Jesus gave his argument to them from the book of Exodus, because that's the part of the Bible they believed. He didn't use circular reasoning. In the same way Paul didn't use circular reasoning in Acts 17, but preached the truth from the authors that his listeners would have understood and have known. He's talking to them using scripture in the Old Testament that they believe in. Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, "What do you think about the Messiah? Whose son is he?" And they said to him, "The son of David." Well, everybody knows that. That's fact. And Jesus doesn't dispute the fact. But in the same way that the Sadducees tried to get him to find some inconsistency in Scripture, or he's presenting them with a possible inconsistency in their thinking about Scripture. And he's planted this seed. I mean, what they think cannot be true. If the Scriptures are right, they're going to have to rethink their opinion, because they think that the Messiah is going to be a particular kind. And Jesus is telling them, no, it's going to be something different. He's going to be something different. He said to them, "Then how does David, in the Spirit," reminding them that David is speaking for God, that David is an inspired author, and they believe that too. David, in the Spirit, called him Lord, saying, "The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies beneath your feet." If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son? And no one was able to answer him a word, nor did anyone dare from that day ask him another question. We mentioned just last time that when Jesus was 12 and he was there in this very space talking to these very people, these very representatives, these folks who are representing the best minds on both sides of the political spectrum, the cultural spectrum, the religious spectrum. And he was asking them questions and answering their questions. We have Jesus at the end of his ministry doing exactly the same thing as he did when he was a boy, in the same space with the same folks doing the same thing. But now the stakes are so much higher. Who is the Messiah? I really want to know what you think. He's the son of David. Well, that's right. He is the son of David. He's going to be descended from David. But in that messianic psalm that you and I both know and believe in, Psalm 110, how is it that he can say that David, who is the father of the Messiah, can say, Yahweh said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies my footstool. If David is his father, how does he call the Messiah his Lord? And they can't answer that question, but we can. And they could if they'd thought about it. Because the Messiah is going to be more than just the son of David, more than just a human being. He's also going to be fully human and fully divine, God's own son. The Messiah is not going to be the son of David, some guy in front of a conquering army. He's going to kick out the Romans. That's not who he is. He's someone more than that. He's fully human and fully divine. He's going to come as God's son, fully divine, and David's son, fully human, to offer sacrifice for all of humanity. And if you will just take this question that I've given to you home and think about it and study it and go from Psalm to Isaiah and from Isaiah to Jeremiah, from Jeremiah to Hosea, from Hosea to Zechariah, you'll see that this is exactly who I'm supposed to be. On the Emmaus Road at the end of the book of Luke, he opens their eyes to the scripture. He explains everything that's said in the Old Testament. Before he ascends into heaven, he opens the minds of the apostles. He tells them, this is what was from the beginning said about me, and it's played out. And he's doing that for the Pharisees as well. He's saying, he's investing this amount of respect in them, that you know the word, okay? So figure this out, because you can. And if you will, you'll know what's true about me. The result, however, is not that there are any follow-up questions or anyone like Nicodemus coming at night to figure things out. People just stopped asking him questions because they couldn't deal with him on that level. And they start planning to kill him. Okay. Jesus is going to deliver a series of woes in chapter 23, directed to the scribes and Pharisees, and we'll take a couple of sessions to look at those, and we'll talk about those beginning next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.